Hello friends, just a quick disclaimer before we get into this discussion video. First off, this was all recorded and editing had begun on it before the Zelda movie was announced to be in production. So we had no idea about any of that. We don't talk about it or discuss it. That announcement simply hadn't happened yet when we sat down to record this conversation. Just as a heads up, we do mention by name several other Zelda YouTube channels that were not a part of this conversation. We do not do so with the intention of lambasting or insulting anybody. We simply are looking at analytics and things that people have posted and discussing the reasoning that we think may be behind that. We adore all of these creators. We talk about them with nothing but praise. There is no drama here if that's what you're looking for. You're simply in the wrong place. With that out of the way, this is future editing Daniel, passing this back to my past self, leading the discussion with my friends here. Enjoy. Should be recording. Yeah, it says it is. All right, well, we're just gonna pray that Streamlabs cooperates and hope for the best.
Hi, YouTube!
Well, this is not live, so people joining us in the viewership side are actually, in a way, we are time traveling because they're watching this and experiencing it for the first time, but they are
fancy
in the future from us. It's crazy. We're time travelers now. We are like in the future dictating someone else's experience. There you go.
I have my ocarina somewhere nearby.
Perfect.
I have one too, but it sounds like crap, so I think it's meant to only be used for decorative purposes.
Mine sounds bad, but I'm pretty sure that's a me problem.
That is your personal problem. No, that's the same thing.
Yes.
I do not know how to play an ocarina, so. But yes, thank you for being here, everybody. And dear viewer, welcome to a little discussion video. We're talking about, as the title and thumbnail probably implies, hopefully, if I'm good at making titles and thumbnails, just the general, the state of things, the state of the house that we all figuratively reside in, which is known colloquially as Zelda YouTube or Zeldatube. I'm your host, Capt Bergerson. I'm joined by, I'm just going to go introduction-wise in just the order that Discord has ordered everybody, so it's totally not random, but we'll all just fire off and introduce ourselves. So let's start with Mr. HG, Adam.
Oh, let's go. I'm never first in these introductions.
Woo!
I'm Adam, or Hyrule Gamer. I make Zelda videos, if you couldn't guess. Mostly like world lore stuff, but you know, bit of everything. Secrets, mysteries, discussions. And yeah, I'm excited to talk Zelda.
Excellent. And next up, the man who is, I'm a little concerned about how he'll be behaving today based on the mask that is apparently wearing in his profile picture, but Mr. Nehru, introduce yourself.
Hello. So I'm Nehru. You'll be shocked to learn that I'm also a Zelda YouTuber. Once, a long time ago, I mostly made historical based lore videos, but now I basically just give my unwanted hot takes about everything.
And it's generally very good hot takes. It's like spicy hot, but you're like, is this an acquired taste that I kind of like?
Well, thank you.
And next, Rick.
I'm RMFH, otherwise known as Rick, and I make Zelda theories, countdowns, and guides, kind of focusing on guides right now, but I'm gonna dip back into the lore here pretty soon.
Yes, and if you need help finding any piece of armor in Tears of the Kingdom, he has you covered. And Mr. Breadman, you're next.
Oh, wow. Hey, I'm the Bread Pirate. I make the best fact videos on the Zelda YouTube sphere, and I like bread.
Perfect.
Petition to permanently change his name to Mr. Breadman.
Mr. Breadman. And next, the Geek Apprentice.
That's me. Hi. Yes, I'm the Geek Apprentice. You could also just call me Geek. Some people say TGA, but then that gets confused with the Game Awards, so maybe don't. I talk about three things mainly: The Legend of Zelda, Animal Crossing, and for 1 month out of the year, the Hunger Games, but mostly focused on Zelda theories, discussions, whatever I find interesting in the moment. Live streams. I would argue that I am probably the most unfocused of all the creators here because I'll go 2 months without doing anything and then suddenly whip out like 12 videos, so.
I saw you posted that you had exclusive, like, limited time Hunger Games merch, but you wrote HG merch, and I was like, why is she shilling for Adam? What's going? Took me a second.
I have to be careful because even though it's my own artwork that I own that is inspired by Hunger Games, if I call it Hunger Games, there's a chance they could see it as copyright. I had to do a lot of research before I posted it.
That makes sense.
It's Hyrule Gamer merch.
It's Hyrule Gamer
Yes.
merch.
Yeah, it's me that's going to be claiming copyright, not them.
And last but certainly not least, Mr. Trends himself.
Thank you. The name's Ed Trends, Triforce Trends, whichever one you want to use. I think I'm a creator now. I've mostly been in the past with discussions. I've been trying to dip into the lore theory sphere. I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy.
I feel that.
Not just any guy, you're the guy.
As of late, the Zelda YouTuber space is, there's been a mix of
Humbling?
panic, some might say, concern, just a variety of feelings about the state of Zelda YouTube. Tears of the Kingdom, obviously the lead up to that was a gravy train of hype that everybody jumped on, and everything was looking very good. But now here we are, 6 months post-release, and people have a lot of feelings, whether it be disappointment, whether it be, wanting to just swear off the game entirely or saying they hate it. Maybe hate's a strong word, but we've had a few Zelda YouTubers outright say, I'm not going to do Tears of the Kingdom content anymore. I'm done with the game. I'm branching out. So obviously, this is a position that the Zelda creator space has found itself in that feels very unprecedented to me. Like, this is not something anyone would have predicted, I think, 6 months ago when the game was launching. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I know a few of you prepared some things to say about this. So let's start. I know, Brad, you've been keeping a lot of data on the subject. So why don't you start us off here? What do you think is happening in the Zelda space, and why do you think this shift in mentality has happened so suddenly?
Wow, I don't know if I should go first. I have a pretty weird take.
Weird is good, and then if people disagree, even better, as long as, we disagree maturely.
I think the Zelda crash, I'm going to call it the Zelda crash. I think that's, what do you say, apt word for it, right? Can be divided into 3 parts. People are burnt out of trying to make ideas on this, or videos on this. There's way fewer views, and the community seems less passionate about this game now. We had a ton of hype at the beginning. Everybody was saying this is the best game ever, we're loving it, and now you don't hear that anymore, right? A lot of negativity. This is the Zelda cycle. Hey, my thesis is actually that this is super normal. And that the Zelda crash was inevitable because most video games go through the exact same thing. And that Breath of the Wild, if it was different, it was an exception to the rule.
Interesting. Now, that is the thing a lot of people point to, is that Breath of the Wild seemed to sustain a certain captivity over people's attention for literally years, which Tears of the Kingdom has not managed to do for even half of a year. So you're saying that that's the exception to the rule.
In fact, I would almost say that Breath of the Wild didn't keep people around that long. I mean, look at Zeltubes videos. By October of that year, he'd started making Mario Odyssey videos. Like, he was starting to sway into other stuff too, and he was the face of the Zelda community at the time. He was the biggest guy, I think. Maybe there was somebody bigger, I don't know. But, I mean, even Rick here. Rick, you were making Mario videos as well around that time, weren't you?
Yeah, I had shifted over into Mario because it had started, the Breath of the Wild content had kind of started to dip down a little bit. So I kind of transitioned, and I came back at a later time when the mod scene and the glitch scene kind of had brought back more viewers to the topics and everything. So there was a little bit of a resurgence there when the DLC also came out.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with Breath of the Wild, there was always something to look forward to. You had the DLC that came out, there were chunks of it for however long that it was, and then less than a year after that, the sequel was announced, and then the hype kind of carried that for 4 years.
Yeah, and that's basically what my thesis is that Breath of the Wild, if it weren't for DLC, would have had the exact same thing happen. But because it had DLC, it went a little bit longer, but that ultimately wasn't enough, so then the sequel is what kind of kept the community hoping for the next thing, right? Excited for whatever's going to come next. So I think that this crash is extremely normal. We didn't know it was going to happen because this is the first time we've had a Zelda community really prepared for a game. Beforehand, we only had like a handful of people, like Zeltic, Chamber of Sages, like 10 people. Now we have 100. So there are 90% of us are unused to this.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for the fact that the Zelda creator community itself has ballooned in size in the last 7 years. Breath of the Wild launched, you had a handful of very established Zelda YouTubers, and that number has just gone exponentially up in the time since. So yeah, there is something to be said for that. I would agree. I will say there is something I kind of predicted in that Tears of the Kingdom launched. There was a huge spike up in hype, and kind of as I anticipated, it was only a matter of time before the dust settled, and then people came up and said, actually, Tears of the Kingdom is not a good game, and then a bunch of people just jumped on that train.
One of the biggest problems for a lot of people, especially in the last probably month, has been the lore, you know, the theory crafting and stuff like that. Everyone's kind of got to a point where it's like, okay, this is a game set in the same world as the last one. And then the creators come out and they say, yeah, TOTK, they just kind of disappeared. This is more for the viewers. This section is more for the viewers. But theory crafting is really hard at the minute. And we really appreciate, when people actually go and like our videos, especially like for our smaller channels. I mean, most of us here, you could still consider small. A lot of the bigger, more full-time creators, they're currently having a break. They're working on bigger projects probably as well than we can afford in our spare time when we're just doing things because we want to talk about them. But we try and pick up what we can with that time, and we try and give people something to watch week by week, which is something that I think Adam juggles really well. Mr. Hyrule Gamer, he juggles really well considering he is full-time. As a smaller tuber, you can sometimes be barraged with, like, for theory crafting, you can be barraged with comments like, why are you theorizing on this? It's not like the Zelda team thought it would actually mean anything because they said this one thing in an interview. But I don't know why you'd try and instantly dismiss something that has 10 minutes worth of evidence behind it. And as a smaller creator, by making topics up to theorize about, you don't get a substantial amount of money from that. You're not making it all up for money or views or anything. You're just doing it because you want to. And you want to be a part of the Zelda community and further people's knowledge on the lore of the games.
Yeah, no, and to sort of further your point, this is not a new thing either, kind of partially to Bread's point. Like, even I made a discussion video with a few people close to Tears of the Kingdom's launch, talking about like timeline placement stuff. I think everybody's talked timeline placement at this point. But I still had people being like, the Zelda timeline's not real. And it's like, are we really still having this conversation? like really?
Yeah.
You know, but people can be so dismissive of something just offhand because they don't like it. But I will say, like, the point is, like, especially with us smaller channels, I think this extends to larger channels as well. I don't think this shift in mentality or this you know, people feeling burnt out of this has anything to do with like big payouts or greed or money or anything like that. And I think like I've seen this a handful of times where people will call Zelda or even non-Zelda, just YouTubers, like super greedy and they're just doing this for the money and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm like, man, you don't know how YouTube works, do you? Because like this is not a career you pursue for the money. Yeah. Absolutely not. Like that's just not how this works, man. Because if it was, there are many careers that you would be better off pursuing, including a job in finance that I left to work on YouTube. But this is where my heart is, right? And so yeah, I left the job that would be for the
as
money.
well.
Sorry, Adam.
I was gonna say there's much more stable ones as well to go for other than this.
Absolutely.
It is very, very passion driven. Like I wouldn't choose this if you're wanting stability and amazing income. Like the chances of that are pretty slim.
Yeah. I mean, like for every Mr. Beast out there is a million people who are just doing this because they love it and not seeing amazing returns. Just to put that out there before anyone in the comments gets real aggressive typing or calling any of us greedy or any YouTuber greedy for wanting to talk about something else. Because I'm sure there will be people who are like, oh, Tears of the Kingdom videos have less views, so they're just gonna do something for the numbers so they can get a bigger paycheck. It's like, no. Yeah. I don't think that's at all what motivates it. Brad made a pretty compelling point. Does anyone disagree with what Brad said? Just off the bat here?
I both agree and disagree with it. First, I wanted to sort of fortify a point he was making about how it is somewhat normal in the sense that if you remember back to the release of Age of Calamity, the views for that game dropped off pretty quickly after release. When that happened, a lot of people were sort of chalking that up to, oh, well, that's just proof that if you make a plot twist everyone hates, then you're going to pay for it. And then later when Skyward Sword came out and views relating to remakes and stuff like that dropped off right away, people were like, oh, well, that's what happens when you release a port for a game that people don't really care about. And now you see it again. Sorry if you can hear this dog. You see it again with Tears of the Kingdom, where instead of just acknowledging that games have shelf lives, people are trying to find alternate motives for the drop in views. So instead of just it being the case that the game's been out for quite a while now and people are less interested in it, it's, oh, well, no, it's because they didn't give good lore, so nobody cares anymore.
Right. So like confirmation bias, essentially, is
exactly. it's like there always has to be a reason for it. It's never just the case that the game's been out and people have played it and are ready to move on. So I do think that's true. However, I would argue that's not always the case. If you look at certain games like Elden Ring, for example, there has been a drop in views, but not a substantial one, and you still see Elden Ring lore videos on the front page of YouTube pretty consistently getting massive views. I don't think that a game fading out of the limelight is necessarily like a foregone conclusion. It is the I think sort of the expected thing to happen. If I was to make reference to like another contemporary game, for example, Baldur's Gate 3 has been out for a while now, and if I was to compare the amount of buzz around Baldur's Gate 3 this far from its release to the amount of buzz around Tears of the Kingdom that far from release, I do still think that Baldur's Gate 3 is still having a lot stronger longevity than Tears of the Kingdom. So there is something about Tears of the Kingdom that is sort of causing a little bit of a drop in interest, I think. And I think it's probably stuff that we've already made allusions to. But I think people are still way too quick to blame the entirety of it on things about the game they don't like, whereas I think probably 85% of it is just that's what happens to new games, and then 15% of it is the choices that they made with the game that don't lend itself to longevity.
Yeah,
Can I address that? So I agree with that wholeheartedly, that some games, by being better, can increase their longevity, but there's only so much you can do to make that longevity greater, even if it's a better game. How do I say this? This is a tough concept to get across. Let me show this. Okay, is it okay if I send something in the chat?
Yeah, by all means.
It's a chart. So I've been keeping track of the Google Trends data for video game, like some of the major video games in the last few years. Elden Ring had a huge spike in how many views it had when it was launched, and then it went down. But it maintained really well because it's a great game. It still wasn't able to keep the same staying power, but it was able to keep a greater staying power because it's a good game. That's a weird way of saying that, but I think the dip is inevitable. That's the point I'm trying to get across. The dip is always inevitable.
Yeah, and I would agree with that entirely.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest points is just that it's a sequel, obviously. I think that's obvious in of itself. Just the fact that it's a sequel, because I think Baldur's Gate it almost came out of nowhere, which is why the buzz was so high. Whereas everyone was like, Tears of the Kingdom's got it in the bag. Before it even released, it was like, well, this is going to be the next big thing. Whereas Baldur's Gate came out and it was like the best RPG in that style for forever.
Right, and I think there's something to be said for what I've been kind of calling the wow factor, which is has nothing to do with World of Warcraft, but rather it's the fact that when Breath of the Wild comparatively came out, and Baldur's Gate 3 as well, you can make the same comparison. It was just so fresh and new and different. Breath of the Wild was just completely different than any Zelda game before it, except maybe the first one. I think if you made a sequel to Zelda 1 without having played any other Zelda game, it would look something like Breath of the Wild. But the rest of the series is like, you can kind of see the evolution of a certain playstyle, and then Breath of the Wild is unlike any of that. So it just had this wow factor of like, wow, this is new, this is fresh, this is different. And I think Tears of the Kingdom builds off of that in some really great ways. I think the gameplay is better than Breath of the Wild. Yeah. But because it's iterative rather than reinventing the wheel, it doesn't have that wow factor. People kind of just expected it to be better, and it was. So it didn't exceed expectations, it just met them in a way, even though what those expectations was something
lofty.
Greater. Yeah, so it's like a really weird like psychology element to it, I think. Especially when it comes to retaining viewer interest. I feel like I cut you off there. Did you have more to add to that?
Well, I think, going back to the lore community only very quickly, that seems to be one of the biggest problems people have at the moment. But I don't think Tears of the Kingdom is like a Blue Moon event where the lore doesn't fit into the continuity, unlike Breath of the Wild. I think it's always been the case that as creators and as a community, we are here to pick up the pieces and stitch them all together. It's never been like the lore is complete and everything's perfect. It's never been like that.
Right.
And I think there's kind of a narrative that it has been like that. And it's just not.
I agree, and I think that's another point is Zelda's lore has always been a little inconsistent,
shaky.
Right? Like Ocarina of Time was marketed as a prequel to A Link to the Past, but if you look at the conclusion of that game and then the prologue to A Link to the Past, they don't really match up that well. Like they just don't. And officially in the timeline, that is still the canon chain of events with a twist now, but or now as of 10 years ago. But yeah, it's like the lore has never really been super consistent. In fact, I would argue that even this game showing how Link is kind of reset back down to 3 hearts is an anomaly. That never happened between Ocarina and Majora's Mask or Wind Waker to Phantom Hourglass. We just had to accept it. We're starting Phantom Hourglass. Where's Link's boat? I don't know. It doesn't matter. He doesn't have any equipment. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Don't think too hard. Brad, you just attached your chart here. Why don't you tell us about that?
This is a chart showing the web search traffic for a few games, some that are very recent. One is Breath of the Wild, and then the other one is Elden Ring, which are not quite as recent. Elden Ring had a huge spike, right? Phenomenal game, ton of wow factor, but even it's eventually succumbed to the dip and lost a lot of the traffic it was getting when it first released. I think that's normal. But if a game is good, then it will retain more of its fans after the dip.
Actually, just kind of as a general question here for everybody here, since we're all creators, we're all still like posting stuff for the most part with somewhat consistency. Has anyone here experienced a massive dip in views in regards to Tears of the Kingdom content?
Yes.
Yes.
I will say that
Mine is due to not uploading a lot, but yeah.
I have not uploaded as much as I definitely have the last few months. But the other thing for me as well is that I've been picking the wrong topics, I think. Whereas I've got a recent example. Yesterday, I uploaded a lore video, and it's done ridiculously well. And
I love that video.
It's by far the best video I've
way.
had in ages.
Great video.
Yeah, thank you. For me personally, anyway, it was a lot about consistency. Suddenly, I'm not a part of some people's Sunday routine, and then also just picking out the content. It wasn't the right content. It wasn't the right fit.
Right. And for those of us here who have deviated from Tears of the Kingdom to maybe other content, whether it be Zelda or otherwise, have you seen that perform better than your Tears of the Kingdom content, or about the same?
Better for me, but that's because Hunger Game is so niche. No one talks about that.
I guess there's new.
I'm shocked. I thought
new
there would be more
film
Hunger
coming
Games
out, right?
YouTubers.
I've never looked for them, but I've noticed that at least in the past few years since the prequel came out, that some of my older Hunger Games videos just spiked. There was one I think it was like 2 days ago. I was looking because my mom, she's very invested in what I do for some reason. And she was like, "What's your highest viewed video?" And it was a video that I thought had like 30,000 views was over 130,000 views.
Whoa.
And I had no idea.
Wow.
I had no idea. And it's the Hunger Games video. I think there's just, if there are a lot of creators, I don't know. Things like Hunger Games don't have the community that things like Zelda does. Like Zelda has obviously this massive community and we communicate with each other, mostly because we tend to be less toxic than other communities.
Yeah.
That
So-
is a trend I've known.
There's that for sure. And that's why part of why I dropped a ton of fandoms on my channel. Also, it was too overwhelming to talk about that many things. But I will say also, I think arguably for Hunger Games videos on my end, the prequel film is coming out in 2 weeks. So everyone's like, oh, Hunger Games, anyone that's interested in that is looking that up. So to be fair, I'm going through kind of Tears of the Kingdom-esque stuff because something new is coming out.
Okay, that makes sense. If I may, Nehru, if I may use you as an example, I hope that's okay. Nehru posted 3 months ago a video. Which one you should play first of the Oracle games, as that was coming to NSO, right?
Good video, by the way.
Great video.
Yeah, that was a good video.
I disagree, but
Thanks, guys.
but the video was great. The point is that video got a cool 42,000 views. Awesome.
Yeah.
The video he posted
Nice.
before that one, again, this was 4 months ago, so even closer to Tears of the Kingdom's release. Tears of the Kingdom's biggest failure, video about the Sky Islands. Also great video. Please go watch that. I wholeheartedly agree with that one. 20,000 views, so less than half the amount of views. Granted, one's a lot shorter than the other. Sometimes shorter videos pull in more views because people are like, oh, I've got 6 minutes versus, oh, I've got 20 minutes. Still, I think that is kind of indicative of one of those things where it's like, even though they're both Zelda content, one is clearly pulling in way more numbers than the other, despite both being great pieces of content.
You know, and the interesting thing is, I've sort of found that when I'm making Tears of the Kingdom content, I can sort of put it into 3 different tiers, and I can kind of predict how well the video is going to perform before I release it based on the tiers. I don't know if this is going to be the case for other people because I tend to release content that is a lot more, I guess the only word for it is negative than most people because I'm a grumbly old man. But when I release videos criticizing Tears of the Kingdom, they do the best every time. When I release videos praising Tears of the Kingdom, they do the worst every time. And when I release lore videos, they do somewhere in the middle. And again, I don't know if that's just my experience, but there is a real it does seem like when people are wanting to watch videos about Tears of the Kingdom, it's more the people who dislike certain aspects of the game that are drawn to it, which is why I can release a video about the Sky Islands being disappointing to 20k views, and then I release a video about how much I love the weapon durability system in Tears of the Kingdom, and I can't even crack 1,000 views.
That was also another really good video.
It was a good video.
Yeah.
Which I
appreciate that. And then I release like a lore video, and it gets like somewhere in the middle. So it's like, you know, my next video is going to be somewhat critical of Tears of the Kingdom as well. And I'm interested to see if that video does well, because that might sort of affirm my thesis that perhaps people are looking for Tears of the Kingdom content, just not always positive Tears of the Kingdom content.
That's interesting to hear, because I've actually wondered, and I don't know how true this is, if people in general just prefer or naturally gravitate towards negative videos, because I've been seeing that recently with all three of my fandoms that I talk about. My Animal Crossing video talking about the things that I regret did, like, it exploded. But when I release a video talking about all the things they did right, it got almost nothing. Same with a different Hunger Games video that I did a couple weeks ago. I was talking about mistakes that it seems they're making in the film, and that did a lot better than the one where I praised all the things they seem to be doing right. So I also have to wonder if there's a correlation between people just wanting to jump in on the negativity. I don't know. Although I will say, for the Hunger Games one, there was several comments saying I was being too harsh, and I was like, oh, maybe there's that. People running to the defense. I have no idea. Maybe because it stirs the pot a lot. Negative ones do.
Yeah, and I mean, people got big feelings about things, right? And it's something
True.
that you can sort of dip into if you want to. A good example is when Age of Calamity came out. There was a lot of discourse in the community about how it was a dead topic because everyone was releasing videos about the timeline split and Astor, who he could be, and stuff like that. And it seems like everyone was just having really terrible Age of Calamity views. But like, I released 3 Age of Calamity videos that were at the time the highest consecutive views I had ever gotten on three videos in a row, and each and every one of them was talking about controversial discussions in the community, like whether the game was canon and whether the marketing counts as Nintendo lying to their audience and stuff like that. And I saw a lot of gain from those videos. So it does often seem like, especially in Zelda, but in other communities too, people are really drawn to controversy and, you know, negativity more than they are to the lore or just like positive videos about the game, if it's not something that is revolutionary, like Breath of the Wild, that merits discussion, which is actually, I think, also why some of the best performing videos you see on Tears of the Kingdom are ones where people are showing off their creative Ultra Hand builds, because that is the revolutionary aspect about Tears of the Kingdom, and that is the thing that people care about the most right now, I think, which is why those videos seem to be performing the best.
I'm probably the outlier here. Everyone unanimously said here they were seeing a dip in views with Tears of the Kingdom content. My Tears of the Kingdom videos are consistently my best performing. I released a video 1 month ago about A Link to the Past's final dungeon, and it pulls in the same amount of views in 1 month that my recent Tears of the Kingdom video pulled in about the Fire Temple in 3 days. And consistently, if you go through my channel, like anything Tears of the Kingdom, with an exception where I did a Splatoon crossover video that flopped. But aside from that, consistently, I did a Tears of the Kingdom lore video, pulls in almost 10,000 views. I do a Link to the Past video, less than 2,000 views. Granted, A Link to the Past is a very old game, but people love that game. It's consistently praised as one of the best Zelda games. So I think I'm the outlier. And it probably does help that I'm not making lore videos, really. Like, I am. I just said I thought that was a lore video, but that my last Tears of the Kingdom lore video was 3 months ago. I've just been making level design based videos, and those seem to be pulling in well. And it might be the controversy. My Wind Temple video was titled Mixed Feelings. I think that was something that maybe pulled people. Maybe it was just a well-titled video. And these are not short videos. These are both upwards of 30 minutes. My 2 recent Tears of the Kingdom ones. So I think there's more to it. I think maybe just some topics resonate more with people. But there are some channels that are exclusively lore focused that seem to be really going through it. Like I said, again, not to call the man out. I love him, but Bandit has basically come out recently and said, I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't like the game. I don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. You know what? don't make videos about things if you're not feeling it. Like, I'm not gonna fault him for that. He's not feeling it, then okay, that's fine. Yeah, Adam, you pretty much mostly talk lore in your videos.
I actually had something to build on your thoughts as well.
Please build.
Yeah, so like how you were saying with your Tears of the Kingdom focused stuff tends to actually do better than the non-Tears of the Kingdom focused stuff. I've definitely seen the same thing. In the last month, I think I've done maybe last 2 months, maybe 4 or 5 Tears of the Kingdom lore focused videos, and then like a couple more general Zelda videos, like just discussions or anything. And I experienced the same thing with the non-Tears of the Kingdom lore focus, which is like my main thing. It was an okay video, like I think it got 21,000 views, but the next video I did after that, back to Tears of the Kingdom, within 2 days it had already overtook that video. And it was kind of surprising because everything feels down generally, but Tears of the Kingdom videos are still doing better than regular Zelda videos for me, which is kind of interesting. It's been motivating to keep making them because, I don't know, I'm personally still absolutely loving making Tears of the Kingdom focused stuff. And another sort of reason that is, it actually came up in a discussion the other day with Triforce Trends and our friend Zinc, that whilst there's a lot of yeah, the Game Boys, whilst there's a lot of like negative feelings in the community right now, which are totally valid, like you're saying, if you're not feeling it, don't do it. Like, it's, you don't want to force anything, but in that sort of negative space, it's almost like staying positive and putting out the content is almost like filling a sort of gap in a way. Like, there are a lot of creators now not wanting to make videos, so it's almost like there's an opportunity for other creators to fill that space and take a shot at, I guess, boosting their channel up, because there's just not as much content out there. Whether or not there's as many people wanting it, that's another question, which you kind of have to view as each week goes.
It's the circle of life.
Yeah.
True.
And Ouroboros, one might say.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Oh boy.
Wow.
This amount of animosity towards Tears of the Kingdom, like, we've seen this cycle many times in the past with other Zelda games, like Wind Waker with its cartoony art style. A lot of people didn't like that. Skyward Sword and the motion controls, a lot of people didn't like that. When it re-released the amiibo support, people didn't like that. I saw a lot of videos where people were jumping on these topics and kind of dogpiling on them. I think a lot can be said with the state of the YouTube platform as well, because when Skyward Sword came out, there were only a very small handful of Zelda creators at that time, from what I recall. I was just kind of dipping back into the series at that time. But once things started moving along closer to Breath of the Wild, more people started popping up, and when they started to do the delays, we saw a huge lull in content creation all around. Like, some of the big ones like McIntyre started to drop off. You know, we just started, there wasn't a lot more to make videos on, because, and myself, I felt like everybody's made a video on everything that we could think of at this point in time. And I feel like everybody's videos are so close together, there wasn't a lot of room there. Now that we have more people in the community and fresh takes on these topics, it's better to go back to them now. But Tears of the Kingdom, when Breath of the Wild came out, it was kind of, for that long period of time, it was definitely so new and fresh that it kept that hype going longer, I feel like, than previous games, because the platform was further along than what it was before, and we had more content creators coming out of the woodworks. So Tears of the Kingdom is kind of going back to that old cycle, I feel like, where we have this, we have some of the community that just doesn't like it, no matter, you know, what you talk about.
Right. And I mean, there's always going to be Zelda titles that don't resonate with everyone. I think,
Totally.
you know, they're still, the Wind Waker versus Twilight Princess debates are still happening. And they're happening sometimes on Nehru's channel. And so
I don't know why they're happening. I don't know why they're happening. Like,
Listen, I'm just saying, Link's crossbow training outsold Wind Waker, so
It's still
no
hurts.
one's really the better game there.
and Wind Waker
as well.
HD outsold Twilight Princess HD.
Because people already
I'm
own it,
about
bro. Why would you want it
destroy this
twice? Come on. Go on, Brad. Virtual high five.
I think the takeaway is that
Flash
it's
high
the same Zelda cycle, but it's intensified in a way due to the way the Zelda community has grown in the last decade, if that makes sense. Or that's my takeaway from from Rick's wisdom here. And I'm glad you shared that, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, your channel, Rick, might be the longest running out of everyone here.
By and far, yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
100%, but my channel right now personally is tanking. So,
as you said, you posted a lot of guides, and what I found with the
it's a
handful
big-
of guide type videos that I have made is that those are like really slow burn videos where you're not going to see like an initial like spike in views like you would with a new theory or lore video, but it's going to continue to get views gradually, basically forever.
And
So
that whole side of the videos and everything, it's a whole different can of worms when it comes to posting that kind of content, because if you're not the first guy to post it, you're most likely not getting the views. Granted, I'm sure there's other things I could do to push more views to those videos and everything. I think there's something to say about the leaking situation with the Switch and games being dropped sometimes 2-3 weeks early. You kind of get behind when you don't take that illegal route to go and obtain those titles 2 to 3 weeks early. So it's a whole different ballpark.
Oh, that's brutal. I never thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's completely different. For my armor guide, I took way too long personally to make the thing. I should have went the route of posting videos like right when I got the armor instead, but I make content differently.
well, I mean, there's something to be said on the integrity side of things, of taking your time to make sure it's of good and accurate quality. Because like I remember the first week that Tears of the Kingdom launched, there were people and websites doing that, where it's like as soon as they found a piece of armor, that like, they find the archaic tunic and they're posting online, here's where to find the archaic tunic in Tears of the Kingdom, and the guide is 3 paragraphs that are just riddled with mistakes, like the wrong cave name on there. Like I literally found a guide with the wrong cave name on it, and it was
Dev
like,
boys are disappointed in that one.
yeah. So it's just like there is something to be said for taking your time to make sure that your production quality is good and it's a product you're happy with, and that it's going to be totally accurate. Though again, this is me on the creator side saying that rather than the viewer side of things, of course.
And maybe I'm deviating a little bit. We've all had those videos, like you were talking about the Splatoon crossover one, where you work so hard on it. You're so proud of the script. You think it's great, whether it's because the story is great or the theory is great or it's really funny or whatever it is, and you work so hard on it. And that's the video that does so poorly compared
Story
to
of
your
my life.
cheap video you just threw out. I mean, for me, for the longest time, my top 10 most viewed videos were all reaction videos. And I was so annoyed by that. I was like, I mean, look, they're genuine. I freaking sobbed when I learned about a sequel to Breath of the Wild. But it's like, but these 30 videos I worked so hard on, and it's like, I understand why, but sometimes it's just frustrating. You're like, but I worked hard on that one. That one I just cried because I was happy.
The video that took me the longest to make, it took me weeks to make, was my video where I talked about all of the instances of collaboration between Animal Crossing and Zelda.
Another
So
great
all
video.
this-
I remember that one,
Yeah, it took me weeks, the longest it's ever taken me to make a video like consecutively. And I released it almost a year ago to this day, and it just recently passed 1,000 views. Oh,
That's depressing. Why?
it
Yep.
broke my heart. I was like, I thought it was going to do well because I was like, oh, Zelda, Animal Crossing both have vibrant communities. It did not. And I tried, 13 different thumbnails, 13 different titles. I just could not get any juice flowing on that video. So I strongly sympathize with that, Geek Apprentice.
And I mean, that just furthers the point that you do this because you enjoy it. If you try to get into making these videos, whether it's Zelda or something else, because you want to gain all this traction and views, there's a way to do it, but it's not going to be the fun route. It's not going to be the creative route. I don't want to sound rude, because obviously there are plenty of really creative videos that have been extremely successful, but yeah, it's just furthering that point of you do this because you enjoy it, regardless of whether it gets a lot of views or not.
Part of what kind of inspired this whole me wanting to have this conversation as well is in the span of one day, I watched 2 videos back to back. One was Bandit's update video of I'm done with Tears of the Kingdom content. Fair. And then right after that, I went to watching King K's How Tears of the Kingdom Rebuilds 3D Zelda video.
Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
long.
Yeah, I
great
actually did that exact
video.
same thing over the last couple of days.
Oh,
That's
did you?
very funny. The exact same thing. They were just one after another in my video queue. I didn't even choose it that way.
That's
Who is
so
this?
funny.
King K?
King K.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great. Great video. I could listen to his voice forever.
Yeah.
His voiceover
I'm surprised-
is immaculate.
I'm surprised you don't know about him, Brad. He's made
Oh
like a
yeah,
lot
no,
of
I've seen this
Tons
guy.
of videos.
No, wait, yes,
Yeah.
I have.
some of the
And,
highest profile Zelda videos on YouTube, I'd say.
It's
Absolutely.
just so long. When video is over 30 minutes, it's like I can't process this anymore. It's a,
Brent's
yeah, it's a
got the short
podcast. That's not a video.
Almost all my
I'm along.
videos are over 30 minutes, but that's including probably this one.
I'm a fiend for long videos.
Yeah.
I'm working my
Yeah.
way through a 9-hour Morrowind review right now.
So-
whoa.
I love a good
Whoa.
binge session.
But this King
But you're
K
saying,
video
wait,
is-
sorry, did we say that that King K's video was wrong?
No.
Wanted to
No.
get that-
No,
no.
just that it was him and Bandit had almost opposite views on Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay, cool.
Exactly,
I'm on the
yeah.
right page now. I understand.
So I watched these two videos back to back, and 6 months after Tears of the Kingdom releases, and he posts this video, How Tears of the Kingdom Rebuilds 3D Zelda, and it is him basically praising Tears of the Kingdom with some healthy criticism sprinkled in, but mostly him praising how much he really just enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom. And it's an hour, and he clearly is not struggling for views on that video. It's already in 10 days past 65,000 views. He's doing just fine. It's probably on track to meet up with his other Zelda videos that are also long form. And it was just very funny to me to see those two videos back to back where it's like, yeah, Bandit is saying, I'm not feeling it. I didn't really like the game very much. I'm not going to make content on it. And King K to come out with his smooth, both of them had smooth, buttery voices, let's be honest. But for him to articulate basically the opposite thing. But King K makes a great point in the first minute of his video, which I think really captures how I have been interpreting a lot of creator burnout on this. And that is the weight of expectation. And in a way, I think a lot of us, we the Zelda creators, kind of set the game up not for success, for disappointment,
Yeah.
because we had such expectation that it was impossible for any game to live up to. You know, this is not me, again, calling anyone out. It's not like one person amped the game up and they're solely responsible. I think in a way, as a community, we collectively kind of amped each other up. And he makes a point of saying, like, they weren't making this game to meet our expectations. They were making the game they wanted to make. And if you kind of remove yourself from years of speculation and years of hype for this is the game I want to have, and just play the game with this mindset of this is just the next Zelda game, I think it fares better than it would otherwise. I don't know if anyone has anything to add on to that point before I
I can't
Yeah.
believe you brought us all here so you could just have some sappy moral of the story with us. This is insane.
You're damn right,
and
Greg.
it worked.
I think there is a certain point at which the size of a channel means that we can't really gauge their views, or I don't think it's even necessarily the size. I think it's just what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter what King K reviews, he's gonna get a lot of views on it. Like he can pick
That's
a
fair.
random obscure indie game like The Messenger and pull 100K views on it because people follow King K for his personality as opposed to what he talks about.
No, that's fair.
Which
And I actually, I always say, as a creator, you will have two types of viewers. You will have viewers who watch you for your content and viewers who watch your content for you. And you start out probably in the former group, but as you grow, you'll gradually move into the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Markiplier is
Like-
a classic example of just personality.
Like for
you're not there for the content because he'll do whatever the heck he wants.
I'm there
right.
for his rippling abs.
Yeah, that is content, really.
Exactly. But a good example is like, I think we all could probably unanimously agree that Breath of the Wild is a much more trending topic than the PS2 GameCube release Shadow the Hedgehog, right? Like, I think that's something we
Probably.
can all agree with.
You never know.
Yeah.
But you know, his Shadow the Hedgehog video has 283,000 views, which smokes most of the Breath of the Wild videos that any of us have released, right? Like with some exceptions, because people are just there to see what King K thinks about games. And to some extent, I would agree that I think there are even people in our community, like I would argue probably Bread and Hyrule, where you guys are starting to have people follow you for your wonderful personalities in addition to your content.
Wait,
But-
was that? I was just gonna like bask in the fact that you complimented your arch rival. I wasn't gonna respond to that. Should I respond to that?
for a moment,
No,
I thought
that's-
maybe just Since
fine.
this conversation's gone on for longer than half an hour, that Brett just checked out immediately.
The other thing I wanted to say is that yes, I 100% agree with you, Captain, and that is something that I've been fighting the battle of all across social media and on our top secret server and all of that kind of stuff. Is, you know, I've really been fighting the battle of you just had your expectations in the wrong place. I was watching Bandit's video and he said something that I've seen all over the place, where he was talking about how he was just expecting more answers, and I've seen that everywhere. A lot of fellow creators who are more soured towards the game. I've seen it in my comment sections. I've seen it everywhere. And it's like, why were you expecting more answers? On what basis was this from? What Zelda game have we ever gotten where they gave us more answers? You know, like
Right.
even direct sequels, they just immediately disregard the previous game. Like it happened in Phantom Hourglass and it happened in Majora's Mask. I don't understand why people thought that this game was going to just be one massive lore dump that's going to sort of tie everything in the series together. And that's not really exaggeration. That really does seem like what people expected the game to be.
There's a conversation I've had with a lot of creators on this train of thought, and I agree. And again, not to knock Bandit. He's a great dude, great creator. I've had the pleasure of having a conversation with him before, and I think he's a swell guy. But yeah, the lore side of things, even though that's what a lot of us build our livelihood around, that has always been something of an afterthought in Zelda. And to your point, like, I actually would argue that Tears of the Kingdom does better as a sequel with its consistent lore building than any other Zelda game has, because we actually do get to see characters from the previous game and what they're up to now years later. And that just never happens, aside from like maybe Tetra's pirate crew in Phantom Hourglass, but even then they show up for 5 minutes at the beginning and then 5 minutes at the end, and that's it, right? So it's hardly even.
I think it's interesting because other communities, it doesn't matter if the lore ties into other games perfectly. One of the biggest lore communities on YouTube is the FNAF community. Bro, that series' lore is not connected at all. They have to bring the pieces together, but that is what's fun about it. And I think people have forgotten that that's the fun of lore and theory crafting.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, like, that's the whole. If they came out with a game and it just answered every question, we'd all be out of a job.
Yeah.
Yes,
boring.
true.
Yeah, it would be really boring.
I think a lot of it depends on what you play Zelda for. And this was a conversation that I kind of started with and never finished with fellow creators, Zelda Lore. Great channel. Go watch him. Go sub to him. He makes some great content. But him and I just don't see eye to eye on this particular subject. And that's, why do you play Zelda? What he said basically was he likes to go play Zelda because he loves to re-experience those stories. So he'll go back to Twilight Princess because he loves going through the story of that game. Which, in fairness, it's one of the best stories in the series.
Just a better Wind Waker.
One of.
I like the story of Zelda 1.
But the thing I go back to Zelda 4 always is I love puzzles. Like, I love puzzles. I know the story of Twilight Princess, so when I boot that game back up, I'm not like, oh man, I can't wait for all the plot twists to happen, because I already know them. So it's not going to take me by surprise. But I love picking apart those puzzles and going through the dungeons, and the gameplay is really well designed. So that's what I find I love about it. So in that way, I think Tears of the Kingdom just resonated stronger with me than it would with someone like Zelda Lore, who just really wants to live and experience those stories, right? So there is an element of just taste, I think, that everyone has different tastes, so not everything's gonna resonate the same way.
Pointing at something that Trends just said, when you look at games, it's almost sort of like people don't really understand what they want, which is funny because that's actually something Fujibayashi recently talked about. But I think often people don't really realize what they want, because people want a Zelda game that just, I genuinely don't think people would be happy unless Tears of the Kingdom came out and was like, oh, the Zonai, those are actually the interlopers who are actually the Sheikah. Yeah. And Majora, guess who Majora was this whole time? Calamity Ganon. Like, I genuinely think there are people who expected that out of the game. Like, I see it all the time. But I think if we got that kind of thing, it would ruin the longevity of this community, because if you look at all of the games that have thriving lore communities, the thing they have in common is obscurity and abstraction. So exactly what Trend said with FNAF, where they sort of give you the lore of each game and it's up to you to piece them together. It's the exact same way with Zelda, although it does make call between game, but you know, they sometimes contrast and oppose each other, and we got to figure out how to reconcile those things. And then, like, what's the other major lore series on YouTube that gets tons and tons of views? It's the Dark Souls series and Elden Ring. And what do those games have in common? Extremely abstract, obscure lore that doesn't really give anything to you, and you have to put it together yourself. When you get games like, you know, Final Fantasy, for example, 7 or 16 or whatever, where those games have really in-depth tapestries of mythology and stuff like that, but it just cleanly explains everything to you. It leaves you with nothing to talk about. You can do lore recaps if you want, but there's nothing to discuss other than, you know, what might happen in the next game. Whereas with Zelda, because of the way they design it, it's almost like we are doing archaeology, where we have bits and pieces of the answers, and we are trying to come up with the most reasonable solution and most reasonable answer, which is exactly what real-world archaeologists do. Whereas I think people want it to be, they want Zelda to be more like dry history books, whereas the thing that makes it so good is the fact that it's more like archaeology.
The Sheikah, the whole Sheikah thing, how apparently they just disappeared, I think has been blown way out of proportion, because I think it's one thing out of 100 that wasn't considered, because they just wanted a reason to go with the next game. They didn't care how that happened, and that was the main like continuity problem. There's some other stuff too, of course, but apart from that, I think that it's been overblown a little bit too much just because of that one quote.
And the thing too is that quote is a little bit, they really honed in on just that one part of the quote, because he basically says like, it's a mystery and nobody knows. But everybody is just honing in on the "it just vanished" part and assuming that that's the answer. Where I read this as the answer being that it's still kind of up to interpretation. That nobody knows is really the true answer, and that extends to both in universe and in real life. But one of my most viewed videos is a theory on that, and it definitely leaves us more interesting subject matter. And to this point, there are things like, okay, just as an example. Breath of the Wild, one of Breath of the Wild's most interesting and engaging mysteries was the 8th heroine, right? And that was super interesting because we could try and find evidence, which was pretty sparse. We could try to piece things together. The man himself, Monster Maze, made some great videos on the subject as well that are really great. Tears of the Kingdom actually did give us a lore explanation for who the 8th heroine was, and it was just so underwhelming. And it makes perfect sense. It makes total sense, but it's just so underwhelming. To just get an answer flat out like that. Like, it was just like, oh, okay. I would have almost rather they not gave us that answer.
That's exactly it, right? We don't always know what we want.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Zelda's greatest puzzle is its story, which has no way to be solved sometimes. Yeah. And when you take that away, you take away an element of the fun.
And just because something is a mystery, it doesn't... Because there are so many people at the minute, it's like, why bother watching and doing theories if the Zelda team don't care? And it's nothing to do with that, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think the Zelda team's mentality on that sort of thing's changed. I think it's just on a larger scale now.
Yeah,
so
I think if anything...
Yeah,
because if anything, I think they made Tears of the Kingdom for the creators. Even stuff like the heads-up display mode. Like, how it's pro mode, it gets rid of the hearts and everything. And like, God, everything else, just... They made so many mysteries, but the problem is with making so many mysteries, they kind of destroyed that balance that I think they did really well with Breath of the Wild to some extent, which is why some people aren't happy with the mysteries and the lore in Tears of the Kingdom.
This might be a little off the topic, but I think part of it, personally, I think this is they're still finding their way with open world 3D games. Like, this is only their second time doing it, and it's also using the same world as the first one. It'll take time to figure out how to integrate that style that they've done for so many years into this format. And like, the balance is a little off, but I don't know. I think with the next game, it'll be even better, and probably again with the next game after that.
Yeah, because I mean, you can see the creators hitting their head on the side of the wall, being like, okay, we want to do this, but we can't quite because it's a sequel to Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think sort of the crux of the issue is that a lot of Zeldatubers who are sort of the opinion that Tears of the Kingdom is, you know, not the game to make content on or anything like that. Yeah. A lot of them were hoping that Tears of the Kingdom would be a game designed for lore YouTubers, that it would cater towards us, but it's not. It's a game that caters towards fans of Breath of the Wild. I don't even think it necessarily caters towards Zelda fans. I think they were trying specifically to make a follow-up to Breath of the Wild. They obviously succeeded in that quite well. If that is something that is underwhelming to somebody, then obviously you are going to have trouble making content about it. But if that's something that doesn't bother you and it's something that you can adapt to, then I think there are views there to be found. It's just a matter of finding the right topics to make videos about, which is why we have people like HG and Captain that are seeing pretty good returns for their time investment. Essentially, it's something that I've struggled long and hard about. At times I've had sort of very nihilistic views towards it, but then other times I'm like, oh, it's not the game's fault, it's just my fault. I am not making videos on the right topic. I'm making videos on things that people don't care about, which is fine if I enjoy making the videos. It only really matters if I'm looking to get lots of views, which I like to tell myself isn't important to me, but it's not true. We all care about it a little bit, at least.
I think the best Breath of the Wild lore videos came out around 2018 and 19, like Zeltic's Forgotten Temple video, other videos of that style around that time. Those, in my opinion at least, were like the greatest. They're the videos I think of when I think back to Breath of the Wild. So I think for lore, it's picking out those topics and then also having such a good grasp on them in the next year or two, that it becomes something that actually has some substance to it.
Yeah, we just kind of got to wait for the negative part of the Zelda cycle to subside, and then people will be more willing to get back to it.
For sure. Yeah.
So we're seeing a dip right now. We're in the dip. We're in the valley. You guys are proposing or hypothesizing that there will be a climb back up. Maybe not back to like launch day levels, but something more sustainable is
if nothing else, it'll be when the next game is announced.
the next game is announced. Suddenly Tears of the Kingdom content takes up.
I want to suggest the idea that it is a unique situation with Tears of the Kingdom in the sense that this is an unprecedented year for gaming. People have made references to previous years that have been this good. I don't agree. I think this may be the best year for gaming ever, like in the history of gaming.
Where we've got Tears of the Kingdom.
I actually agree
Mario,
completely.
Starfield, Spider-Man, Baldur's Gate 3, like just
Alan Wake.
banger after banger.
That's Sea of Stars.
That's the tip of the iceberg.
Remake,
Yeah.
Metroid Prime remastered. Let's not forget about that. Pikmin as
Yeah.
well for
At the start of the year
all three of us Pikmin fans.
It is such a good year for games that in any normal year would be talked about all year long, like Armored Core 6, which is incredible, is just completely forgotten about because
I forgot about Armored Core.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an amazing game because there is just a sheer amount of quality games coming out this year. And even games that not everybody universally loves, like Starfield, it's still taking up a huge amount of conversation space that Tears of the Kingdom in a normal year would be able to inhabit a little bit more. So, I don't know the degree to which it affects things, but I think there is no doubt that the fact that we are in such an insanely stacked year probably has a lot to do with why people are maybe not searching for Tears of the Kingdom as much as they would normally. Also, it's been a very eventful real world year as well. So also Wind Waker's better than
Let me out. Let me out. Hold me back.
Okay,
So
we all know the best Zelda game is Adventure of Link, anyways.
Dude,
Yeah, it's a close second. Right behind Link's crossbow training.
Wand of
literally
Gamelon,
second.
I think, is number one.
These
You're forgetting about Zelda's Adventure.
Oh.
CDI.
That game is so bad I can't even joke about it. It is the worst of 3 terrible games.
I think we're at a point where we're in this dip, and I think that is really what it is that I think we were really, as creators, very eager from the onset to pump out as much content as possible, which in some ways maybe oversaturated the feeds of people a little, but now we have to be a little more careful and deliberate about what we want to actually talk about. Like now we have some of the biggest creators like Monster Mace who just takes like several weeks between uploads, months at a time sometimes even. He like very carefully picks out something deliberately and he does just fine. And of course, to what Nehru was saying earlier, I think he can post anything and pull in the views, but I think that is also stems from the fact that he is as deliberate as he is. Like he has built himself up a reputation of he can upload anything now and get views because we know he's carefully considered what to even upload in the first place.
I totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah. That was well articulated.
For creators, especially smaller ones, you can use this as a chance to do the stuff that you've been wanting to do for the last few years when there was like a big hype cycle that, you might have been thinking, oh, I want to do this video on like, on Ocarina of Time. But then you're like, Yeah, but Breath of the Wild 2, though, those reviews.
I get that 100%. Yeah, this is the time to
Yeah.
start experimenting and try crazy stuff.
Exactly.
And you know, it's funny. We were talking earlier about RMFH brought up the time right after the game delay and about how that was a bit of a dire time for Zeldatube. But that was actually the point in which I saw some of the videos that I loved the most from this community, because it was a point at which people really had to dig deep to
creative.
find interesting
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
to talk about.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. It was like limitation leads to creativity, right? So
Yeah.
I hope that's what we see in this situation too. Whereas I think it is even Monster Maze posted on Twitter about how he really didn't like the story of Tears of the Kingdom like at all, but he's still making really interesting videos about it.
Yeah.
I think there are parts of Tears of the Kingdom that we cannot deny are impacting the community, but that is just an opportunity for people to overcome those obstacles.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people, they got into that rut of always going for the very serious and the theories that go for the one-way answer, whereas now you can be more creative and spread your wings a bit more with theories, which I don't think's really been a thing since Breath of the Wild. No, the last few years at least.
Yeah, it's okay to leave things a little open-ended.
This is super random. You were talking about kind of we did this ourselves. Like, if you're disappointed, what were you expecting in the game? You should have been expecting a fun game, not something to answer all of your questions. Something I was thinking about because I just got my husband to start playing it. And I don't want to say I regret watching the trailers, but watching him experience the game without any concept of what it was going to be like. All he knows is me for like the first 2 weeks staying up till 4 a.m. and him coming out to get water and being like, "You're still playing?" I'm like, "This game's amazing, leave me alone." That's all he knew. And he's like, "You're getting no sleep." And I was like, "And it's worth it." But like, there's almost a part of me that's like, I don't want to say I would have enjoyed the game more, but I think I would have had more of a shock factor from the game if I hadn't seen the trailers. I'm not saying I would never, like, I'd go back and change that. I don't know if that would have changed anything. I'm not saying in future Zelda games I'm gonna not watch trailers. Of course I'm gonna watch them, because otherwise I'm gonna find out the info anyway, because we're so integrated into the community. But I just wonder if that would have changed anything.
It's really funny because this harkens back to an earlier round of discourse that the Zelda community had, which was about Tears of the Kingdom's marketing leading up to release. And people were saying like, oh, they're not showing enough of the game. They're not showing us enough of what to expect. And my takeaway was like, it's not really bad, because like, hell, this game is pulling in pre-order numbers like no tomorrow, despite showing us very little. And I would argue like maybe they even showed us a little too much. Like there are elements I wish they had focused on maybe less. I think if they had focused less of the marketing on the Sky Islands, I think people would have found that less
100%.
to not be as much of an underwhelming experience as it was. I think they focused just the right amount on the depths, which is barely. There were like 3 trailer shots of the depths. No idea that was going to be this huge thing. That was such a pleasant surprise. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where sometimes less is more.
I feel like the whole misconception that the Zelda team don't care is kind of put to rest by the depths, where everything down there is brand new, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. But it's basically just a thing in the game, just to have more lore that is maybe brand new.
Right, but the problem, or what people take issue with, is its implicit lore, not explicit lore.
Yeah, a lot of the best videos, I think, from the time was like, even Adam does them now, the world lore videos, where you go and look at like a random set of buildings and
I love it.
what happened with that set of buildings, or in the depths, it's what happened down there with the Bargainer statue was one of them that was definitely one of the bigger ones at release. But even that was more explicit than most of the mysteries that are in the depths.
I agree with you. I was just throwing that in there as a bit of a devil's advocate thing, but it is one of those things where it's like, would this be as interesting to talk about if they were super explicit about it? And I don't think it would be. And that was the thing, like people said when Breath of the Wild came out, they said this is a big empty world with nothing in it. And I'm like, no, every one of these sets of ruined buildings and a little like location name comes up on screen. Every one of those tells a story.
And now you have caves as well. Oh, caves.
Caves are so good.
Yeah, they are.
You piqued my interest. I love caves, man.
Yeah, caves are my favorite. Yeah, cave boys, but damn, they are my favorite part of the game, I think.
It's in my blood.
So I guess that is the next little bit before we maybe wrap up. We've been going for an hour 20 now. So where do we as a Zelda creator community go from here? Because obviously the outset or the outlook that a lot of people have is that it's doom and gloom. In an hour, we've kind of established, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe we'll weather the storm and we'll be just fine. But where do you think, as a community, or even just as your own channel, where do you think we go from here? And I'll just get everyone to fire off in the same order we introduced in. So we'll start with Adam. Any thoughts?
I think like all things, it's like you can't really think too far ahead, and even when you can, anything can still come up. So like I feel like in terms of like the future of content creation around Zelda, I feel like it's like a just take it week by week or month by month, however you plan yourself out. I don't know, I think although there is a bit of a dip, I feel like most games tend to have the occasional peak out of nowhere, and I don't know, I guess it's just like trying to take advantage of those when they come. Like the game's definitely not dead by any means, which some people, maybe it's an over dramatizing it, but there is some people who kind of feel like it's, like you said, doom and gloom, or it's heading that way. I don't think it will be. I think there'll still be a very stable audience for it, and you never know, it might grow a little more, might dip a little more, but I just think take it week by week. And I think for me personally, the main thing's just I'm just gonna keep talking about what I enjoy, what I find interesting. Like Ed was saying, world lore, I love that stuff, so I've still got plenty of things I want to talk about, plenty of things I'm passionate about, and loads of things I want to find which I haven't discovered yet. They're probably still out there.
And Nehru?
Each person needs to do whatever they need to do to get through this sort of moment in the community. And again, as we've established, it is not a moment for many people. Many people are doing fine or even better than normal. But for the people who are, having a hard time with it, just do whatever you gotta. I totally not only respect but appreciate Bandit's choice to sort of stop focusing on a game he doesn't really care about. It takes a lot of integrity to just step away from it instead of making content you don't really care about,
I agree, yeah. And my calling attention to his video was not to lambaste him or throw shade at him or anything. Like I fully agree. Everyone's got to make the right decision for themselves.
Yeah, and I didn't think you were. I just
for sure. Just before any commenters get mad, I was gonna throw that one.
Dang commenters. But yeah, so I think each person just has to do what they need to do. In my case, I am going to still make Tears of the Kingdom content, but I think very little of it's going to engage with the game itself, because honestly, I enjoyed the game quite a lot, but I just don't really have strong feelings towards much of the actual lore and stuff like that. Instead, I will just keep making videos about the meta stuff around the video. So for example, my next video is talking about, some of the story direction they went in. The video after that is talking about, I'm sure you guys have probably seen on social media, there's a lot of commentary from people who are like trying to defend Tears of the Kingdom story, but they defend it by saying, oh, well, Zelda games have always had bad stories, so why does that really matter? Which is just obviously not true.
Yeah.
The video after that's talking about like how the community over speculating got us into this situation to begin with. So, I'm not going to be making many videos about the game itself. It'll be about the game's place in the community. And that's just what I got to do to get through it. And, eventually the views will come back. This is not the first time my channel's dropped in views, and I'm sure it won't be the last. It's just a matter of posting through it.
Right on. Rick?
Yeah, basically the same thing. I mean, just keep chugging along through this lull. I think somebody said that some of the best Breath of the Wild theories I had seen come out between 2018 2019. I think it was Trends. I think a similar thing's going to happen here. We're not going to see the best parts of Tears of the Kingdom content for a little bit. This is a perfect time to experiment with content. So you make videos about Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, other Zelda titles, that might just get you through it.
Brad?
I think it would be in the best interest of everybody in this call to form a conspiracy where we start shilling out the story that there is doom and gloom.
Oh, yeah.
So that we become the only YouTubers in the community.
I agree. Yes. And there is absolutely no creativity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We are the Zelda Illuminati.
Oh my gosh.
Shark bait. Hoo-ha. Yeah. I'm excited for the future. I think it's going to be great. This is pretty normal, and we're basically going back to pre-Tears of the Kingdom numbers, so it's not like viewership is going to die as soon as we get a new video game announced, a new Zelda game, like a teaser for it. I think that a lot of those people who are doom and gloom are going to change their attitude.
For sure. And yeah, I agree. After this call, we'll start setting up meetings for our secret society, and everything will be peachy.
Who's the first sacrifice going to be?
I think it's it must be Bandit, right, guys? It's gotta be Bandit.
It's gotta be. Sorry, Bandit.
No.
Geek.
Well, I guess I can really only speak for my channel personally, and I'll be honest, I was not aware of the negative spiral until like maybe a couple weeks ago. I was talking in someone else's live stream, and I was just very surprised. And even as someone who plays Zelda for story and music, even though I love the gameplay itself, I love Tears of the Kingdom, but maybe I'm just weird. Well, I am weird. That's not the issue. Anyway,
we're all weird here.
I had a musical theater teacher say to me, to be weird is normal and to be normal is weird. So I was like, like, okay, I'll just stick with that then.
If you're not weird, you're probably boring. So
Possibly.
nobody wants to be boring. So
I should also add, statistically, we are weird for sticking around in the Zelda community. Most people bandwagon.
Oh yeah. It's because we love it so much. But speaking for my channel, I actually just looked and realized I actually didn't really post many Tears of the Kingdom videos other than like the tons of bits of that large discussion I got to do, which was great. And I still remember that very fondly. Very upset that they didn't get more views. Not because I was like, oh my gosh, these should be breaking bank, but because I was like, it was so good. Come on.
those were great discussion videos. I was really happy to be a part of that as well. And everybody watching this video should jump over to that one next, because it's a lot of creators who gave a lot of differing views on a lot of different elements of the game.
And put up with me for 5 hours. I don't know why y'all did that. I never gave y'all an amount of time, and I'm 5 hours later, I'm like, I'm so sorry.
It was really good to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. But I guess for my channel, I always emphasize that I'm a very hobby-based creator. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the endorphins when a video does well, they're there. The extra couple $100 in my bank account, not gonna lie, do enjoy that when that happens. Like, I'm not gonna deny any of that, but I think it's clear that for my channel, I've been thinking about this for a while actually, is that I really need to focus on building the community itself. Piggybacking of what, Daniel, you were saying earlier about like, some people will watch for the content, but some people are watching the content because they like you. I think we talked about this in your stream, when people come to your stream and they're like, I can't stay long, but they just wanted to say hi. That's what I want to focus on, is that idea, and just really, I don't know, building the community. And I'm doing that personally by trying to live stream more and talking with people more and not worrying about having better content. Like, not that I don't want to improve, I want to improve, and I have noticed improvements in my content over the past couple years, and I can tell when I'm being lazy about it. So that's my focus right now, is just really solidifying what my personality is in my videos and being okay with it too, not trying to look like others. I've been influenced by others, which is good, but I need to focus on that, especially because I don't know what the next few years of my life are going to look like. So I want to solidify that now.
And last but not least, Mr. Trends.
I think I'm pretty much echoing a lot of Nehru's point, but this, I think, is probably going to be the biggest dip. And so I'm going to keep posting. We made it through 2020, the year where we had a year of zero news and COVID. So we made it through that. We can make it through this. And if you lose your passion, stop making content. Johnny, Zinc, the other cave boy, said in his video a while back that the Zelda space hasn't even got a 1 million subscriber channel. So I think there's room for this community to grow even further. There's always space to fill, and there's always people who want content for something and they just haven't seen it yet. And I always want to try and get more and more of my personality into videos as well. As the lore community, it's less so about making one theory, more so about solving the game. I think that's the interesting thing with the lore community at the minute.
Well said. And as we were saying this, Adam posted a video. Not even joking.
Oh yeah. That was scheduled. I kind of
This is scheduled.
That's funny.
Sure it
Well,
is.
probably going to be watching that after this, but no, it goes. I mean, I think it goes to show like your upload schedules that there's still stuff to talk about here. So yeah, I think the takeaway here is this: we're maybe weathering a storm, but everything's gonna be okay. And I think actually like we're starting to see an upturn again. We mentioned it before we started here, but like Zeltic and Zelda Master just started a new podcast. Monster Maze is still posting. Adam's still HG still posting. There's still untapped potential, and I think the next few years, as people have to really start digging deep, we're gonna see some of the best Zelda content maybe ever, or at least so far. Should be interesting. Does anyone else have anything to any stray thoughts they want to throw in the ring there? Any final thoughts there before we finish
I
up?
got one more.
I just wanted to say I've thought long and hard about it, and I actually think we should sacrifice Tyler Townsend.
Oh, I thought you were going to say me.
Yeah, that's
so-
a good choice, actually. I'm good on that one.
Yeah, we could do that.
Still have his gift that he made a while ago. It's pretty good.
Damn, I thought I was being cooked for a second. Oh my lord.
Perfect. Well, what I will say for now, again, thank you to everyone for being a part of this conversation and giving us your input. I was hoping that we'd get a good variety of perspectives from channels of different sizes and channels that make different kinds of content. And I hope that everyone listening at least found something of value in this conversation. If you're not already, make sure you go subscribe to every one of these channels here. They're all great. They're all pretty different from each other, but in their own special and unique ways, which is really, I think, the lifeblood of the channel, or of not the channel, of the Zelda community, is the variety of voices that make up this creator space. Now I'm real sappy, so thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Bye.
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 Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I'd like to take a quick moment to say thank you to those who supported me on Patreon or here on YouTube as a channel member. Thank you to Grey Mage, Brenda, Tetra, Justin, Midnight Naomi, Bunny, new supporter Stefan, and all of the other names you're seeing on screen right now. You guys make this all possible. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.